Hi, I'm Nas Campanella and I'm the Disability Affairs Reporter at the ABC, and I am going to be putting huge checks into the post for both of you. Yeah. That was an amazing... I was trying not to smile too much, but thank you both. It's very
I think it was more of a takedown of me than anything else, but I'm glad that you took some positives out of that. There wasn't much light for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, what can I say? But yeah, I used to read news on Triple J for 7.5 years, and 2020 was the year I left and moved on to a new challenge, a new chapter.
Hey, Naz, we used to work together, right? And I remember one of the things that I struggled with growing up was there was no representation of people with disability in the media. I know you did too. I'm not going to lie. When I started working at Triple J and I covered breakfast, you also did the news, covered that week as well, full time. 2 people on air together on Triple J doing breakfast. It was pretty sick, wasn't it?
It was pretty amazing. And I there's been nothing like it before, and not since the two of you, the two of us kind of graced the airwaves together. And I think that's what I loved the most about it. It was just 2 people, with disability, but just 2 people kicking ass. And I think that was what felt so good about it.
And I think I was listening during that time. Dylan made sure that I was. But it was also the great thing about radio is it was just your voices. For people who are in the car, they might have no idea. And that's fine that you both have disabilities.
Well, voices and sparkly personalities, hopefully.
What can
I say? But I think, I think when you're on radio, you step into that booth, or you roll into the booth, and it's just you, the microphone, and you kind of forget that there's an audience listening sometimes. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely did. And I always chose to kind of picture or imagine one person listening to my news bulletins. And number one, that kind of calmed the nerves a little bit. And B, you could kind of get warm and feel like this certain sense of energy about what you were doing. And I think hopefully it came across that you sounded a bit warm and friendly and endearing, because you were picturing someone that you loved or cared about when you were reading news or doing whatever it is you're doing,
Straight out of the radio handbook. That's exactly what you should be doing. Just picturing who is the perfect person in your demographic and then relating that to a family or friend.
Exactly.
Very good. Now, usually, Naz, when we start this podcast, we start at the beginning. We go back to your childhood. But if you don't mind, while we're on the topic of Triple J Newsreading, let's start there where people might have heard of you and the amazing process you go through for being a journalist, if that's okay.
So I essentially used, a system that included 4 audio streams, and they were all built into the desk, I guess. So in the studio, I had a laptop which had screen reading software that had been loaded onto it, and it's kind of this robotic, Americanized kind of voice, and it scans everything on the screen and it reads it all out aloud into my headphones. And so essentially I read the news by listening and then reading or repeating what I was hearing. And so that was coming into my ears. Plus there was a clock telling me when to start and finish the news bulletins, because they were specifically timed. There was also my voice coming through the microphone, and then the little audio snippets that you play during a news bulletin. And apart from those 4 audio streams, which was a lot to kind of listen to, and it was really hard to concentrate at times. I had one hand on the laptop in front of me, kind of maneuvering through the stories. And then the other hand was on the studio panel, and that would be the hand that I'd turn the microphone on and off, fade up and down, work the buttons basically. And you were doing all of that at the same time.
So I don't think we've mentioned yet, for people who don't know who you are, you are blind, correct? Fully blind or low vision?
That.
Yeah. So I'm blind. So I guess that's what makes it.
See, there you go. Yeah.
Someone's like, okay, yeah, it's pretty impressive. 4 different sound cues, but I could do that. Oh, hang on a second. Low to no vision.
So we're going to give the people listening a little taste of what it's like in a second. But can I ask you this? Newsreader. All right, you're blind. You want to be a newsreader. The key word there being read, being able to read, right? So a lot of people, when I first found out that you had a disability, I was shocked because of how bloody good you are at broadcasting. And I was like, how did she decide, or when did she decide that news reading was going to be, I guess, your career, considering the fact that obviously it's impossible for you to read without a screen reader or Braille?
For me, reading has always been listening. And it is reading for me. It's just a different way of doing it. And so newsreaders, it's a title, but you can do that in a million different ways. And I think for me, I always loved, when I was a kid listening to radio, I loved the way people sounded. I loved their voices. Like I was that nerdy kid who used to get cassette players and like kind of record things and then record my voice and like, put the song in between and like just pretend like I was hosting my own show at home, and I'd make people listen and all that kind of thing. So I grew up really wanting, I guess in a sense, I grew up liking the sound of my own voice, which is really terrible to admit.
Don't worry about that.
But I think it's the way I learnt about the world around me, by listening to people on radio. So I loved the fact that was a job that I could potentially do in the future. And then news reading was just one of the many things I wanted to do when studying journalism at uni. And it was one of the many things that I wanted to do when I got into the ABC for my first job. And so I just mentioned it to someone there, and I'd been doing a lot of voice training. And there was just a few really brilliant tech people who said, if this is something you really want to do, let's put our heads together, let's figure it out. And we did. And it took a lot of trial and error, a lot of playing around and a lot of practice. And, at first there was quite a few bumps in the road, but eventually we got there. And I think that's what all good innovations are about. It's about trial and error and testing and giving something a go, because you're not going to know that it works unless you just get out there and do it.
I think it's true. I think, that title is simply words. I know, being one of my best mates, Dylan says, oh, let's go for a walk and get coffee. You don't say, let's go for a roll and get coffee. I mean, the vernacular doesn't change the purpose.
Yeah.
If you were jumping on a skateboard, Angus, the two of you could roll together. I mean, really,
Exactly.
it's just, it's like when people say, did you see that? Or did you watch that show? Those words don't offend me personally. They might be words that other blind people might not want you to use. I don't mind, because for me, I did watch that show. I listened. It's just the same thing for me. I just interacted with a program or whatever it might be in a different way to you.
Yeah, people often say to me, oh, do you want to walk and get a coffee? And they go, oh, I'm so sorry. Mm-hmm. And I go, I forget. I'm like, what for? I'm like, why are you saying sorry?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right, I can't walk. You know what I mean? So
but I totally understand.
They shouldn't.
And that is language that some people do not use and don't want you to use in reference to them. And I think that is absolutely fine. I just think it's always good to ask and just be respectful and triple check what language you should be using.
Well, let's put some proof to the pudding, Naz. We've got your audio from a Triple J bulletin you've done in the past. You've sent us this. So we're going to hear the 4 different types of sounds you're hearing during this piece of audio. I deliberately haven't listened to this myself because I didn't know which piece you'd sent us.
Yeah.
But we're going to hear the automatic American voice. Will we hear the countdown in this? What else will we hear in the background?
You'll hear a bit of everything. So you'll hear the little beeps, which are essentially the clock counting you in. You'll hear the theme, you'll hear my voice, and you'll also hear Jaws, like the little Americanized voice. It's called Jaws.
All right, here we go.
High Court citizens and soccer qualifiers. G'day, Nas Campanella with Triple J News.
Labour frontbencher Penny Wong has accused the Prime Minister of acting like a tin pot dictator over his threats to send opposition MPs to the High Court. So far, the MPs and senators with question marks over their citizenship status have asked Parliament to refer them to the High Court. But if the major parties can't agree on the new citizenship disclosure process, the government threatening to use its majority in Parliament to refer all possible dual citizenship cases. Senator Wong says it's a sign the government's under pressure.
You should see Angus's face. He is losing it.
Just for people who are listening to that, so obviously that's a behind the scenes look. You don't hear
and obviously
news in case you hadn't.
And obviously a very old bulletin because it's all about dual citizenship saga.
It is true. It is true. But people, if that is obviously what you hear, not what people hear, they of course only hear yours. And you're enunciation of that is so perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what's
you don't miss a beat.
That's what's in my headphones. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, sometimes I did miss a beat, and that's okay. Really, it's, there were times where I would breathe a little too long between a sentence, or I would spend a bit too much time thinking about how to pronounce a particular word, and then I'd lag behind and have to just repeat a sentence or something, and sometimes I'd get a bit annoyed with myself and frustrated. And of course the text line would light up and call me all kinds of names and all that kind of thing. You know what? Mistakes happen. I'm human. I'm human like everyone else. And I guess the real test for me was that I just kept going and made the best of whatever the situation was that, presented to me. I mean, I had times where the desk literally just shut off and died. I had times where...
Naz, you and I were on air together. I was doing Triple J Breakfast, and what happens is, for my studio's in charge for 57 minutes of the hour, and for 3 minutes of the hour at the top, it's Naz's studio. So it transfers, right?
Yeah.
So if something happens to Naz's desk, I can't get back in until 3 minutes past 9, right? And you and I were doing news together. 2 minutes in, your desk, your voice froze.
Yeah.
Right? And you're just like, hey, everyone, I am not getting the news in my ear. And you just got to kill time.
I've done everything. I've sung. I sung to the audience once. I literally, at 30 seconds to the end, once went, and now turning to sport. I'm really sorry. There is no sport. The computer's just died. Don't you really hate that? And then just talked about how crap technology can be for 30
honestly,
seconds.
that's what happened with me.
It's just what you do.
Owned it. I was so
Dylan
impressed.
can't even jump in at that moment to try and have a conversation about the technical issues. I know how it's set up within the windows of the technical aspect of radio between studios. So, you've just got to feel that moment.
So when I came off the news, I was like, hey, Dylan, not going to hear, that was Naz's desk broke down 30 seconds ago. Naz, you're a legend, blah, blah, blah. Here is Run the Jewels, and played a new song or whatever it was, which was pretty cool. But yeah, you're at the mercy of the tech so much, aren't you?
I am, because obviously if the tech, goes kaput for everyone else, they can just stretch over and they'll pull out, a piece of paper that they've printed of their bulletin as they're running into the studio as a backup, which they never want to use, but at least they've got that backup there that's absolutely not going to fail them. But I don't have that. So I've got a backup computer, but if the desk completely dies, then both those backups are gone. There's nothing I can do about it. And I think, the real testament of a good newsreader is someone who is good under pressure and can just fill that spot when needed.
I mean, from a radio aspect, it doesn't even have to have the desk sometimes for a segment just to go wrong. For you to say the wrong thing, for you to make a bad punchline, all of a sudden you're just sitting there with dead air, just in a bad moment. And in those times, I'll hit a song off and I'll kick myself the same way because I haven't done the job that I wanted. I was so deprecated of myself that I was upset at how it had come to the air. So I can totally understand when you make a mistake with your line, that's your moment to be great on air, and maybe you fluffed it. But that's sometimes you can be at the mercy of the text as well.
Yeah, no, it's totally true.
And now, speaking of people doing incredibly poorly on an audio medium, Angus O'Loughlin is about to do this. So, Naz, this is
Dylan's idea, by the way.
So what I'm going to do is, I've made a news bulletin. So I am the Jaws, the robot voice, right? So I'm going to play for you and I, Naz, and everybody listening right now, a news bulletin that I made up that Angus is going to try and repeat like you do. He's going to take his headphones off right now and not listen to what I've made, and then he's going to have a first crack at it live. All right?
Okay,
All right, so I'm going to take my headphones off. I'm going to take my headphones off, which they are now off, so I can't hear you guys anymore. I'll just push myself back from the desk and the microphone, and this is what Dylan wants me to replicate. Here we go. Hang on.
Hi, this is Angus O'Loughlin with a ListenABLE news update. Wheelchair tennis superstar Dylan Alcott has taken his talents off court, being named last night the sexiest person alive. Dylan beat out previous winners Brad Pitt, Ryan Gosling and Shannon Knoll to win the 2021 award. And Australian journalist Nas Campanella has made history, becoming the first journalist with disability to win the Journalist of the Year award at the 2021 Walkley Awards. In her speech, she paid homage to all the incredible people with disability out there doing great work to break down negative stigmas, in particular, the ListenABLE podcast. That's the news. Back to you. Hang on.
I don't know if you'll get past that first sentence, mate.
Naz,
really?
what do you reckon about my
I'm back,
news
by the way.
bulletins? Good bulletin, isn't it? Do you like the
Oh,
bulletin?
look, Brill, let's just, let's
So
go
I'll give
with
it a
it.
shot in a second.
Let's hope all those things come into fruition, by the way.
Yeah, I hope so.
Can I ask a question though, Naz? Would you prefer a voice, like a real voice in your ear, or Jaws?
Like, would I want Dylan in my ear, basically, is what you're saying.
Who would not want Dylan in your ear?
Okay, I guess you're so used to Jaws. All right, so I'm going to play a little theme song, and then I'm going to do it. Once again, this is the first time I'm hearing the audio that you just heard, and I'll try and replicate it with as small a delay as possible.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I embarrass myself and everything.
Hi,
Hi,
Angus.
this is Angus O'Loughlin
ListenABLE
with the
news
ListenABLE news
Wheelchair
update.
tennis superstar,
Wheelchair tennis superstar Dylan Alcott is taking his talents off court. Being named last night the sexiest person alive.
Dylan beat out previous Ryan Gosling
to win Shannon Knoll
award.
To win an award.
And Australian journalist Nas
Campanella
becoming the first
has made history,
with disability,
becoming
the journalist of
disability
at the 2021 Walkley Awards.
A Walkley Award.
In a speech, she paid homage to all the incredible people with disability out there, doing great work to break down negative stigmas.
Yeah.
In particular, the ListenABLE podcast. That's the news.
Back to you.
Not bad start.
All right, so let's just critique that. There were some serious grammatical errors. Okay. You didn't remain composed in that first sentence. It was extremely serious news content there. And there were missing words all over the shop. But I think you did a great job for your first time.
Thank you. Well, the problem was once I lost it, my brain's trying to catch up.
Yeah.
So I was just playing catch-ups, and then all of a sudden there's a Walkley Award, and I'm thinking, no, I've got to say something about journalism before this.
Yeah.
So that was a problem.
And that's the thing. Your brain is constantly working, and you cannot switch off for a single second in that 3 minutes. And so just imagine that there's other stuff coming in, like, suddenly someone drops a story that you didn't know was going to be in there because there's breaking news in the middle of your bulletin. You've got to then just do it without the audience knowing that you're thinking about, oh, what the hell is this story? It's just come in. I've just got to read it, and I've got to sound like I know what I'm talking about, and that you're composed and you're ready to go.
Now, as if you fall behind on a bulletin, if you, like Angus did, do you just scrap it and regroup at a point, or do you try and catch up? Does
can you hit spacebar and stop it and try and catch up, and then spacebar again or something to keep it going? Or?
Yeah, so you use the arrow keys, the up and down arrow, to basically go through the lines, like the different lines of the story. So I can sometimes go back and forth depending on where you are in the sentence. If you're kind of in the beginning, then yes, you absolutely can do that, or the end. The beginning or the middle. But if you're at the end, it's hard to click back up. You've got to listen to the whole sentence. So, you might hear me slow down a bit so I can listen to that sentence and linger on it a bit longer. So there's all these different strategies that you can kind of use.
I've been in there when you've done the full one, like it's 3 minutes. I reckon the scariest part is you're doing the bulletin, and then the Jaws goes 10, 9, and like counts you down to finish. And if now just still going, it's like, and right across the Triple J News Update, because most people are reading the clock.
Because remembering,
and you get shocked.
You get that 3 minute window, so you don't have any other time past that before it switches over to Dylan's desk. It's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. It's
cool. And we should also just reiterate, I only had one component of the 4 that you get during that, which is obviously you get the countdown, you get the
countdown, the grabs.
And you're pushing buttons. You're pushing the grabs, which is, I reckon,
and I only did 45 seconds or 37 seconds of a 3 minute bulletin that you would have to do. I would have been 4 news stories behind.
You would have lost your job.
I would have been kicked out. Absolutely.
Hey, Naz, congrats on your role at the ABC. So the National Disability Affairs reporter. That's awesome. So was that a role that's ever been actually out there, and people with disability haven't had it before, or are you the first to have it?
So we haven't had this particular role. I mean, the ABC's always been really supportive of the disability community. We had Ramp Up many years ago, which was run by the fabulous late Stella Young. And, that was incredible. And then obviously that came to an end. And then this particular role, I think for me, really, I wanted to introduce a role at the ABC because for so long I'd seen people without disability writing about disability issues or about people with disability. And this is not just across the ABC, but, you know, all across the country, all different media outlets. And the way that disability had been portrayed for so long just really got under my skin. It was such a pity party. It was inspo porn, to use that term, you know, coined by the late Stella Young. And I just wanted to change it. And I thought, you know, the Disability Royal Commission was starting, and there was going to be obviously a lot of really tough content to come out of that. And I wanted to make sure that people with lived experience were at the centre of all of that content. And, you know, I wanted to bring some new faces to the screen, some new voices to the airwaves that hadn't been heard or seen before. I mean, there's no kind of people with disability on TV, you know, in a prominent kind of news reporter reading role. And so I really wanted to try and change that. So that's why I came up with the idea, pitched it, and I was really lucky that they just said yes straight away. And we've, you know, done incredible things with it since.
I love that. I would have vomited if that role went to someone who wasn't disabled. And you know what? I reckon there would have been a chance that it potentially could have, especially at other, you know, news outlets and things. So I think it's so awesome to have somebody, as you said, who's obviously extremely talented like you, but also with lived experience. One thing that I've also noticed as well is there's just more news stories about disability getting broadcast because of you, right? So I always found in the past, I'd listen to Triple J News or whatever news I was listening to, and sometimes there wasn't as many disability stories because the person reporting it might not have a disability. They might not think it was, you know, newsworthy as much. Did you find that, I guess, having someone at the coalface internally like yourself actually promotes other journalists to talk about disability more as well?
Look, I think it's twofold. I think we are at a point in society now where we're really focusing on diversity. And for a long time, I have felt like so many other, I guess, streams, I don't even know if that's the right word, but streams of diversity were focused on, and so they should be. They are so important. But I felt like disability was just being left behind and forgotten. And not enough was being done, whether it be in employment, in you know, culture and society generally. And therefore, not a lot of change was happening. And obviously, we've had massive things like the NDIS being introduced, and that's made a significant difference to so many people's lives. But with that, you know, also means that people are out in the community more than ever before. They've got more opportunities than ever before, and more kind of choice in what they participate in, what, you know, employment programs they take part in, what day programs, if they go to a day program at all, they want to take part in. And so I think we've reached this point where we really needed to make a shift. And I think society's really been, you know, supportive of that. But then there was also with me there, it was this wealth of, I guess, knowledge and access to case studies and contacts that perhaps wasn't there before. And I think because of my lived experience, I'm able to shine a light on issues that people hadn't thought about. You know, for example, very early on did a story about dating. Well, how many people without disability have never thought of people with disability as being dateable? Here I am making up all these words. Or, for example, you know, doing a story about independent living for people with high support needs, because so many people in the community have thought, oh, so you're in a wheelchair, you can't move from the neck down, you couldn't possibly live independently. You need to be, you know, in the family home. Well, no, that's not true. There are initiatives and programs and funding to make sure that you can live independently. And so for me, it's about shining a light on all of these things, because the reality is that we can talk about wanting to change attitudes and all of those sorts of things and putting in these programs. But if you don't make everyone aware that we are people first and foremost, like everyone else, and change that part of the attitude, you're not going to change anything else. And that is how, I guess, the reason why I wanted to do it.
Firstly, before I move on, amazing words.
Yeah,
what a great thing to listen to.
Well said. You took
so
also that one of your statements was out of my playbook also about I say exactly the same thing. There's all these other streams of diversity, and they're all very important. However, it is heartbreaking when you hear politicians, people say, they go LGBTQI, gender, race, all religion, and then they just stop. It broke.
Well, and I think what's really important is to remember that people with disability are also Indigenous. People with disability are also LGBTQI.
It's the only one that affects all other streams. You're right.
Yeah, and you will find intersectionalities across our community. And I think that's what's so amazing about this job, is that I get to shine a light on those, and I get to find people that have never spoken to the media before, either because they just have been too afraid, or they haven't been approached, or didn't think they could, or because they're nonverbal and a journalist couldn't, be bothered to work with them and their speech therapist to make it happen. I guess that's, of course, it's me at the forefront and making all this happen, but really it would be nothing without the incredible people who, say, yeah, I want to talk to you. Yes, I have a story to tell. I'm simply there providing the platform and the support that those people need to do that. And it's really the most special feeling in the world. I used to say my dream job was Triple J. I mean, I landed that job when I was 25 or 24, and it was my dream job, and it was amazing for 7.5 years. But toward the end of the 7.5 years, I was looking for something else. And I had been an advocate for so long, and I wanted to bring together both of those streams of journalism and advocacy. And I kind of can't believe that it's kind of culminated in this particular role, but I love it. And it's all consuming and exhausting. And, I couldn't tell you how many emails I get asking either, I'm struggling at school, or my child's struggling at school, and I need some support. And, I'm obviously I can't do self-advocacy, but I'm so grateful that my job means that I'm providing perspective for so many people, lessons for so many people, but also just hope that things are changing and that people can see themselves for the first time in a role that they might not have thought of themselves in before.
Yeah. A question for you in regards to the news reading, going back to it for a second, is when you look at TV news presenters on Channel 10, Sandra Sully's, etc., The Project, they always have pieces of paper in front of them. Now, those pieces of paper are backup scripts of what the teleprompter is saying. So if the teleprompter goes down, they can look at the piece of paper in front of them and continue. You chose not to learn Braille, I believe. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I didn't choose.
Yeah.
So I have a secondary
interesting
condition.
story, this one.
Yeah, I have a secondary condition called Charcot-Marie Tooth, or CMT, and it's basically a muscle condition. It's degenerative, and it essentially means, it's neurological. So it essentially means that over time, the muscles in my arms, legs, hands, and feet waste away, and it affects my balance, and it affects my sensitivity. So I actually can't feel the Braille dots on the page. So I was learning Braille. I learned Braille, from the age of 3 or 4. Wow. And I was always really fast at writing. And then, obviously, I was a pretty smart kid. But when it came to reading, I struggled. Like, it was awful. And I struggled for years and years, and had awful teachers kind of pushing me and telling my parents I was lazy, and they just needed to, I needed to try harder and all that kind of thing. And then it wasn't until I was taken to a neurologist where they actually diagnosed me with this condition. And so Braille was no longer an option. And we discovered that when I was kind of 9 or 10. And so that was really sad, because I'd lost, at the time, I think my parents felt like I'd lost a lot of time and was falling behind because of an undiagnosed condition. But then to get that diagnosis meant that, well, we know why now, and we can start to find other options. And that's when I discovered audiobooks and JAWS, the screen reading software, and it really changed my life.
And that new upgrade to JAWS as well, which is my voice.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, you and I need to work on that. We need to go and talk to some manufacturers, I think.
Yeah, we're going to make a lot of cash.
And I think, look, my CMT affects me in other ways as well. It's not just Braille, obviously, sensitivity in my hands and feet. So, in winter, it's a nightmare for me, because my feet, because of a lack of blood circulation, get really cold. Oh. And so I'll, turn the shower on. It's obviously hot. The floor heats up. You'll put your foot on there, and it will take my feet a little bit longer to register that that's hot. Or when I go to touch the kettle, it takes my hand a little longer to register that that's hot. And that can be quite dangerous.
Yeah. Same as me when I get in the shower. I'm like, oh, that's pretty hot on my knee. And then I put my finger on it. It's like 30 degrees. Yeah. It takes me a second to go, yeah.
And then there are other times where you go to have like a blood test or something, and for me, it's like, oh yeah, just do it in my arm. Oh, you don't even notice. So for that stuff, it's all right.
Yeah, pros and cons.
Yeah.
And what about for writing? can you write? If you had a piece of paper in your hand and a pen, could you write a sentence?
Oh, my husband and I always laugh about this. So I have memorized the alphabet and some numbers, but I often forget, like the J and the P get me every time. I just always forget them. So I'm always like, oh, babe, how do we write that again? So look, I don't usually, I mean, I know kind of enough to, I feel a bit confident kind of signing my name, for documents and stuff. It's a bit of a wonky N and a wonky, C.
Which leads us perfectly into my next question, which was around your signature. Apart from being a mega famous radio presenter on Triple J and everyone just wanting to get your signature because you're a big fame bot, you've got your credit card, the back of that signature to verify documents. Have you ever had any problems with that? Do you use DocuSign? What happens in your life when it comes to your signature?
I just sign. I know enough to sign myself, or I sometimes get my husband to sign with me with permission, with the two of us sitting there together, that kind of thing. But no, normally I just sign myself. And I've got like a signature guide as well. Like it's like a little, kind of like a little card, and there's a little space cut out of the middle, and you can put it over the spot we need to sign, and you sign like that. It's kind of like a little guide.
Oh, I didn't know. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'd be so lazy if I was you. Mine would be 3 circles.
I have thought of like creating a little stamp for myself and just going, whoop, but then I realized how problematic that could be.
Yeah. Someone's copying it. To go back to Triple J, and you mentioned sometimes people were quite critical of your news reading if something went wrong with JAWS or one of your bulletins, and the text line would come through. Dylan has told me some of the wonderful messages he's received on that text line over time. Did you want to hear that feedback? How did you know that those texts were coming through? And how did you first face those first early day criticisms?
Look, I know that when you put yourself out there and you are in the public eye, you're not going to get everyone loving you. It's just the reality of it. And the reality is also that, I obviously have, certain views and like everyone has certain views, and you might put them out there and not everyone will agree with you, and that's okay. I guess for me, I've always been very aware of that, and I haven't let people get me down, even from the very beginning. Obviously, it was a little heartbreaking to have some of that stuff come through, but you take it with a grain of salt and you keep it in perspective, and you grow from it. You go, yeah, you know what, you're right. That wasn't my greatest bulletin, or that wasn't my greatest story, but I'm going to learn from that, and I'm just going to move on, and I'm not going to let that stuff get me down. I think it just is part and parcel with having a job that's, in the public eye. It just is what it is.
Yeah, there's plenty of dickheads out there that you can't control.
Yeah, but for every dickhead, there's also, correct, 1,000 amazing people. And I think, you kind of need to, sometimes it's really hard, but I just have chosen to be on the positive side of things whenever I can. And, you surround yourself with brilliant friends and family who are always there for you no matter what. And it's in times like that where you see your true kind of family and mates, because they're always there for you no matter what.
Speaking of those legends that do give you positive affirmation for the work you do and stuff, have you had people come up to you IRL, in real life, who were on Triple J fan or an ABC news listener or watcher and had no idea you were blind?
You mean in that moment? Or?
Yeah, like they came up and they were like, oh my God, I didn't realize that you were low vision, blind.
No, I think most people, if they've come up to me, they already know. But there have been loads of people who have sent an email saying, we've been listening to you for years, just for some reason heard a story or something, seen something that you've written and have found out. And
awesome.
Yeah, I think it for most of them, they've said it's changed their perception. And I just like to be seen as the person that's out there just doing a good job. I mean, it's, but then I also see that, yes, I'm doing it in a different way that hasn't been done before. News reading at Triple J in the way I did it had never been done in the world before. And that's something to be incredibly proud of. And it wasn't easy to do. It took a lot of practice and hard work, and I'm really proud of it. And so, no, I'm not just going to pretend that, it was just any ordinary newsreader who just walked in. I'm an ordinary newsreader, but I was doing it in a really unique way. and that's something to be proud of.
I was at a music festival beyond the valley. It's a mate's music festival, and a guy came up to me and he'd had a few of everything, and he came up to me a bit shook, and he goes, like almost crying, and he goes, "I'm a bit freaked out." I go, "Why?" He goes, "I thought, just judging by your voice, that you were a tall black man with dreadlocks, but you're actually a small white guy in a wheelchair." And it freaked him out. I was like, "That's very good for you." And
I didn't even know what to say to that.
I know. I was shocked. And I was like, well, he obviously just had listened to the radio and he obviously didn't hear my content where I mentioned I'm in a wheelchair every 3 breaks. So.
Yeah.
Wheelchair tennis champion Dylan Alcott here.
Yeah.
Naz, what about for you? Did you, your first bulletins on air at the ABC or Triple J, did you mention that you were blind, or was there a period of time before that kind of the cat was out of the bag?
No, look, when I started reading bulletins on Triple J, I just did it because I was there. It was my job. I loved it, and I was ready and raring to go. And then a little while after, we decided to write a piece about it, and we did. And obviously, things kind of exploded from there. But when I started out, I was just an employee like everyone else.
You're the right person for the job, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you always been disability proud, Naz, or did you struggle a bit when you were younger? Because you are right now, which I love, but was it a journey for you or something that was innate?
I definitely struggled when I was younger. I never used my white cane. So I've had a cane forever, but I've never really used it. For me, I felt like it made me stand out. I felt like it got all this unwarranted attention. And, when you're a kid, kids can be horrible. And some people used to say, really nasty things. Not a lot, I have to say, but some people would. And I felt like I was different. I did feel like people treated me differently. So it took a really long time, I think, really, when I was kind of in mid to late high school, where I was really starting to think about what I wanted in life and realizing that I could do more than just kind of, going from home to school and taking my friend's arm. I think really the first time I started to think that I wanted to be, using my cane and be independent was when I did some work experience in year 10, and it was at Clio magazine.
Hey.
And I went off with my best friend at the time. We got the train. I grew up in Western Sydney, so it was, probably a 50-minute train trip from the city. Got on the train and went into the city, went into this amazing magazine and got to hang out in the fashion cover and do all these different things. And I realized, I was like, I wish my best friend wasn't here. Like, she doesn't even like this magazine. She doesn't care about it, doesn't want to be in the industry. Like, I wanted to hang out and touch all the beautiful clothes and do all cool things. And she just wasn't interested. I felt like she was just coming along for the ride. And I realized then, if I used my cane, I could do this on my own. And I think that was the moment when I went, yeah, I'm going to do all these different things. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to get a great job, make my own money, get my own place, move out on my own, do all these amazing things that everyone else is doing. And I think it was a real turning point for me. And I realized then that, just embrace the disability, because it's part of who you are. It's not who I am, but it's a significant part of who I am. And I love it. And it's who I am. And to be honest, a lot of people ask me whether I'd change, if there was some miracle cure or one operation or whatever it might be to fix my sight. I'm not interested. It's all I've ever known. It's, and I'm really happy with who I am and the life I lead. And that's enough for me.
Good on you, Naz. Beautiful words. Also, don't want you to panic too much, or everyone listening, but you're talking to 2 Clio Bachelor of the Year alums right here.
I promise you, Naz, I've written down here, congratulations, Dylan, for not mentioning his Clio Bachelor nomination, but then he just went and ruined it.
Yeah.
He went and ruined it.
Oh, very funny.
Dylan, you can't ever,
Life highlight.
You'll always put it in there, Dylan.
Hey, bloody oath.
He didn't win, though.
I didn't win. I lost to a guy I've never heard of.
Adaptation is good enough.
I lost to a GWS footy player who I don't think's on a list anymore. Yeah.
Naz, I've got some questions just about personal life, being blind, if that's okay, if I can shoot them at you. We've had people who are on blind before, Steph Agnew, Ben Pettingill. But can I get some questions that I forgot to ask those people in the moment?
Rapid fire.
Ooh, let's go.
Okay.
I'm nervous. Sweaty palms.
How do you choose your clothes when you shop?
So I have an image in my mind of what color is and, all the different colors. No idea if the blue I imagine is actually the blue that you guys see.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Brown, yeah.
Yeah, but I definitely have a perception of color. And, as you grow up, you learn about what bits of your body you think are nice, and those are the things you kind of want to show off a bit.
Makes for me.
No, all right, fair enough. And there's that, but also I think I tend to remember, like, if someone says to me, oh, that red color looks really good on you. So I'll remember, like, if I'm trying something on in the shop, what colors does this particular thing come in? And if it comes in a red, I might buy it in a red because someone says, it looks really good with my dark hair. I also really love, like, beautiful textured fabrics as well. So lots of lace, bit of, sequin and things that are light and structured and stuff like that. So sorry, that was a longer answer than you probably ever anticipated, but I'm a bit of a fashion theme. So, and I read lots of fashion blogs as well, and I'm on Instagram as well, which is obviously a picture-based platform, but I follow a lot of designers, and just if I can, designers need to start describing their clothes a bit more, so that I can, know what I want to buy. But yeah, so that's how I do it.
So when you say that labels need to, describe what their clothes are more, we're talking about something that we love mentioning on this podcast, which is alt text. So for a designer, they might post up a photo of a blue dress and go, now in stock, hurry. And you're like, what's in stock?
What's in stock, what color, what style, what fabric, what are you pairing it with? And Dylan does not like alt text because he never does it. So
I'm obviously very pro.
You're horrible at it. You never do it. And it also means that I often just go, you know what? I could like your photo on Instagram, Dylan, but I'm not because you didn't describe it.
I will openly say I am shithouse.
No, you're not good, man.
Alt text. I know. I've got to get better.
I mean, apart from being the disability advocate that you've been your whole life, I mean, we're now in a podcast that lives in this space.
Can't be good at everything, but I'll get better.
Once again, did not win Career Bachelor of the Year award.
No, I agree.
But if he had done the alt text, maybe more people would have voted.
And it's very easy, and I'm going to get better. Naz, Steph Agnew, who you know and I know, who's, I think, episode 5 of this podcast, she bags me nonstop about it. And it's one of my New Year's resolutions. And
for people who don't know what alt text is, when you're on Instagram, there's an advanced settings option. And then on the picture, it says alt text, where you can describe this photo is of Naz, Dylan, and Angus doing an episode of ListenABLE in the studios.
But it's so easy. It's when you go to tag someone, it just says alt text there. So it's not actually as hard as you think.
Yeah.
But you also, for example, describe, Naz is,
pink shirt.
where, and, dark brown hair up in a ponytail. Dylan's a white male, I don't know the rest, but white male, that just little details.
We should mention the ListenABLE podcast Instagram has alt text on every photo, and I do like to describe myself to our low vision or blind community as incredibly good looking.
Do you know that? He does secret little alt text messages. Like he'll be Angus is looking amazing and Dylan looks bad. Like he does it's really good.
But I could be more descriptive. Absolutely, just going off that.
Please do.
And Naz, you don't use a guide dog, is that correct?
I don't. I had a test dog when I was 21, and it was this beautiful dog that I got for 3 weeks because I was considering getting a guide dog. And he was not fit to be a guide dog, but he was a pet therapy dog. So came to my house, had him for 3 weeks, and I just felt at the time like I was just a single mum at 21. Great for anyone who wants to be a single mum at that time. Wasn't what I wanted. I was maybe coming home after a party, maybe not. Just hanging out, going out with friends, had a really busy lifestyle and like any other 21-year-old, and didn't want to come home and worry about dog food and poo and brushing and all of that stuff, all of the responsibility that came with having a dog. So I decided that wasn't the best for me at the time. I've been using a cane and it's great. But now that I'm older and I, thinking about, getting a house for the backyard and all those sorts of things, I also now really see the benefits. For example, a cane, you have direct contact with the ground. You feel and you can trust yourself as to where to put your feet because you have the cane that's telling you that information. a guide dog, for example, walks you right around obstacles. So you might not even know they're there. For example, I walk the same way to the bus stop to get to work every day. And the cane might come in contact one day with a set of witches' hats, you know, that are telling me there's an obstacle in the way, walk around it. The dog will walk you directly around that. And all I will know is, oh, okay, there must have been something there because the dog's going a different way. Whereas, yeah, so it's a trust thing as well. I've sort of wondered whether I could actually trust a dog. I didn't grow up with pets. So it was a bit of a, yeah, it'll become a bit of a challenge, I think, and not having that direct contact with the ground, especially when I have a lack of balance in my feet as well. It's going to take a lot of getting used to, but I am really seriously considering getting one in the next couple of years.
You said you're getting a house with a backyard. ABC paying pretty good by the looks of it, Naz. That's nice.
Coming from you.
Oh, I didn't say well.
What sort of
Just
deal
be a
buying
reporter, just read you paid. I like it.
I didn't say we're buying
another
one.
Phil, if asked to describe your appearance, how would you answer?
Oh, I've never thought of that. Dark brown hair, pale skin, a pointy kind of nose, pear-shaped hips, and not so small boobs.
Nice. Big smile as well.
Yeah, very infectious smile. That's great. But it's if you were to ask me, I mean, not that I'm sure from an aesthetic point of view you care what I look like, but what would you like as a descriptor if you were to ask me? Like, what are some things you want to know? The color of my hair,
Yeah,
maybe
for
my
like your
eyes.
husband, for example, do you ask him all these questions when you start dating?
No. I mean, it's really not important to me, I guess, what someone looks like in terms of how good looking they are. But like when I met my husband, for me, it was all about he's incredibly intelligent and incredibly kind and warm and very funny and one of those genuinely interesting person, but also interested in other people. And those are the things that I loved about him. And then obviously, I don't even know how I found out that he has kind of, you know, dark brown hair and kind of pale skin and all that kind of thing. But for me, it's more about who the person is. And I guess later on, you find out what people look like. But in terms of like an alt text description, yeah, I think things like hair color, skin color, eye color, what they're wearing, you know, do they have kind of, you know, pear-shaped hips or, you know, I don't know. Yeah.
Body type, body figure, fuller figure, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Muscly.
Yeah. But not as a kind of, not as a judgmental kind of thing, just as it's probably things that you notice about a person. Yeah.
But it might be also interesting, and I'm only guessing as somebody who's able-bodied, but it might be interesting to attribute a voice to a certain type of person described that way. Like, oh, I really didn't think that your voice would match how you're now being described to me, which is, I always find that interesting when, you know, for Dylan, for example, someone thought he was a guy with dreadlocks who was black.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess for me, I've never thought of it like that.
You've actually just triggered an idea of something that was a TV show, and I've got two questions to this because I've got one written down and another one.
If it's a good idea, keep the TV show for us so we can make quiche.
No, okay. The idea is how do you
watch
TV?
Yeah. Hey, don't worry about that.
Yeah, so how do I watch TV? So listening, basically, is the short answer. But I also use a lot of the audio description. So it's a separate audio track or narration, if you like, that's built into a program. And it basically tells you what people are wearing, facial expressions, landscape. It describes all of that extra kind of information that you would miss as a blind person if you were watching a show by yourself.
Can everybody do me a favor tonight? If you are watching Netflix, Stan, Binge, whatever it is, go into where subtitles is, and there is different languages. You can change the language, and you can do English audio descriptor. So you understand what Naz is talking about. It's really cool. So it'll be like red car driving down the street. There is the sun up there, and then they speak their dialogue. Yeah. So you can actually turn it on. It's built into all the platforms, which is pretty cool.
Really interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And my second part to that is there is a TV show that is on Netflix, and it's called Dating in the Dark. Do you take offense to the idea that, you know, they're making this propaganda reality television show where all of a sudden, you know, we take away your, you know, your vision and, you know, now you're going to date based on personality? Whereas it's kind of this gimmick for them, whereas, you know, that's part of your reality. They're just kind of profiting off that, if that makes sense.
Look, I have no idea what this show is, and God, now I feel really old, but I've got no idea what the show is, haven't heard about it, nothing. So obviously coming to this question from that perspective.
Yeah.
I think what I would say is that for me, when you can't just kind of put a blindfold on someone and send them out into the big wide world with a cane. That's just not reality. Most people with disability, whether it be blind, deaf, whatever it is, they have support groups and services around them who show them or show us the skills, tools, technology that we need to live independent and full and happy lives. And so I do, it frustrates me a little sometimes when you might hear of, you know, exercises that you might do sometimes, and you just throw people, you know, into the wide world with a blindfold and say, cope, that's how blind people, you know, do it all the time. No, that's not the case. We have been given the tools that we need to navigate whatever situation it might be. So it's not necessarily reality. And sometimes I worry that in those situations, people come out thinking more negatively about disability because they might go, gosh, that was really, really tough. And actually it doesn't necessarily have to be if you've got the right support.
That's a great answer.
People say it's scary. They're like, well, I'm not supposed to be scared. Also, to answer part of your question, Angus, you can't profit off disability unless people with lived experience are involved. You know what I mean? So
yeah, absolutely.
Shout out to...
Well, they didn't say dating blind. They said dating in the dark. It'd be a blacked out room. But yes, I totally understand.
An example is Sia at the moment has a new movie coming out.
Oh, yeah.
She has a new movie out now called Music about a young girl with autism. And the young girl, Maddie, who always plays in Sia's film clips, she's the lead role. Maddie Ziegler. And Sia said it would be cruel to have someone with autism try and do this. And then like every autistic actor in the world's like, hey, Sia, get effed. I can do this. Don't you tell me what I can do. You know what I mean?
I think wherever possible. Okay, yeah, sorry. Go.
No, please.
Say it.
No, all good.
Okay.
I'm not.
We have a bowl of uncomfortable, and as this is where somebody sends us on our social media, or they can email us directly through our ListenABLE podcast at outlook.com and ask us a question that they want us to forward on to you, whether it can be anonymously or with their name attached to it. Sometimes these can be, you know, quite tricky questions. This is a question I'm actually not sure what answer this person is looking for, but they knew that you were going to be in the podcast. And this person, Mike, has said, are there certain views you enjoy the most? Do you enjoy a light of sunset, or do you picture your own landscape and enjoy things more than others?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. That answer's quite simple for me, actually. The beach, because I can enjoy it in so many other ways. Obviously, it's the sand under your feet. It's the sound of the ocean. It's the saltiness of the ocean on your skin. And it's the way the beach, I guess, makes me feel it. It's freeing. I can lie there and listen to an audio book on the towel while someone else, while a friend's lying next to me, or I can hop into the ocean and have a friend nearby. I don't go into the ocean on my own, but I have a friend nearby that I can be there on my own, not holding someone's arm, and it's quite freeing and relaxing. And I find it quite a meditative experience. And I think, generally I wouldn't go to the beach unless it's a sunny day. So you also feel the sun on your skin. And I guess for me, I can imagine what that looks like. And it's all those beautiful colors in one. And I think it's more about how it makes me feel. But yeah, that's kind of a landscape that I find is my happy place.
Great question. You can have the beach, Naz, not for me. I'll take a nice concrete.
Yeah, I've heard you say that.
As much concrete as possible.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. We couldn't have hoped for greater answers, greater learnings, and to just get a look and insight into your work life. What an incredible, difficult process that you've learned. It's amazing.
Yeah, Naz, so if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do so? But also, I just want to ask, what's next for you? Like, you're obviously the Disability Affairs reporter now. Do you just want to be the lead political reporter one day and just, normalise your disability in a sense, or are you happy with where you're at?
Who knows? I'm an open book at the moment. I think I've just taken on this role. It hasn't even been a year since I've been doing it, and I'm just so thrilled with all the things that I'm doing at the moment and the opportunity that this role presents. Really, it's, I've basically been given a blank canvas, and I can, make whatever I want on this canvas, and I find that so liberating, and it's a huge privilege to have this role, and I'm not going to take it for granted for one moment. So this is it for now, and it's, I'd love to write a book in the future, and there's a few other little sort of, mini projects, but at the moment this is it, and I'm so happy and grateful that I get to do this.
And you're extremely busy, as you said. You're covering the the Royal Commission into Mistreatment of People with Disability, and you even said before you came on, there was a familiar name on the Royal Commission the other day, and you said he was a better advocate than me. Is that right? Who was it?
Look, I have to tell you, your brother Zach is doing quite a good job, and I think you might have to do a bit of catching up.
I heard he was good.
Flying a very, very good flag for the community, I have to say. Gave you quite a good shout out.
Okay,
you can always count on him to be a publicity person.
Yeah, the amount of people that said, "God, your brother's good," and I'm like, "He's almost better than you." I was like, "Shit, I better."
Well, he works with you at a foundation.
He's a disability consultant, access consultant. He cares about the community. So, just want to get in there. Shout out to you, Zach.
Shout out to you, Stacker baby.
Aww.
And also, you've referenced this a couple of times, and we need to get this company to listen. Audible, you have got a great advocate, ambassador, endorsement waiting with Nas Campanella. Don't go to Celeste Barber. Don't do this. You've got right here a woman who has mentioned just off the cuff, you live and breathe audiobooks. Of course you do. You're the person.
Give her the cash.
You're the ambassador.
I will definitely be putting some cash in the post for the both of you. You've just given me the biggest publicity push on here. It's been amazing.
We want it.
Thank you so much.
You're a bloody legend.
Thank you
for coming on.
Thank you both for having me. It's been a pleasure to chat to you.